The cold woke me before the pain did. Stone against my cheek, damp and rough, the smell of mildew and old blood thick in my nostrils. I knew that smell. I had died with it filling my lungs. My hand flew to my chest. No sword. No gaping wound. Just the frantic, rabbit-fast beat of a heart that should have stopped beating 6 years ago. I pushed myself up on trembling arms. The room was dim, lit by a single guttering candle. Bare walls. A broken pallet in the corner. My own reflection in a tarnished bronze mirror, gaunt and hollow-eyed, wearing a threadbare gray robe that hung loose on my shoulders. The cold palace. I was back in the cold palace on the very first day of my imprisonment. The day the Empress Dowager had poured scalding tea over my hands and accused me of clumsiness. The day I had begged for mercy and received none. But that wasn't what made my blood run cold. What made my blood run cold was the shadow shifting in the corner of the room, a shadow that resolved itself into the shape of a woman. She wore a servant's plain blue dress, but her posture was wrong, too straight, too still. And in her hand she held a thin, gleaming wire. "You were not supposed to wake," she said. Her voice was flat, emotionless. It would have been kinder. A quiet death in your sleep. No pain. No fear. I scrambled backward until my spine hit the wall. My hands were shaking. My mind was still reeling, trying to reconcile the memory of my death with the reality of my beating heart. But one thing was crystal clear: this woman was here to kill me. Here, on the very first night of my second chance. Before I had even taken a full breath of this new life. "Who sent you?" My voice came out as a croak. My throat was raw, parched from hours of unconsciousness. The woman smiled. It was a terrible smile, hollow and practiced. "Does it matter? You are a nobody, concubine Liu. A disgraced concubine with no allies, no family, no future. The only question is whether you die quickly or slowly. I prefer quickly. It is more professional." She stepped forward. The wire glinted in the candlelight. I had no weapon. No guards. No one even knew I was here except Xia Zhu, my maid, and she was barely 15 and terrified of her own shadow. In my first life, I had died 3 years from now, cut down by a soldier's sword during the rebellion. I had never learned who had sent that soldier or why I had been targeted. I had died confused and alone, convinced that my neutrality had been my salvation. It hadn't been. And now, someone was making sure I didn't live long enough to test that theory again. "Wait," I said, holding up my hands. "If you're going to kill me anyway, at least tell me why." A dying woman's last request. Surely even an assassin can grant that. She paused. Her head tilted, considering. "You are not as foolish as you look." "But no. I do not talk to my victims. It creates complications." She lunged. I rolled sideways, my shoulder slamming into the broken pallet, sending splinters flying. The wire whistled past my ear, close enough to sever a strand of hair. I grabbed the first thing my hand touched, a ceramic bowl that had held water, now empty, and hurled it at her face. She dodged easily, but the distraction gave me time to scramble to my feet. I ran for the door. My fingers had just touched the wooden latch when a hand grabbed my ankle and yanked me backward. I crashed to the floor, my chin cracking against the stone. Blood flooded my mouth. The wire came down toward my throat. And then the door burst open. Xia Zhu stood in the doorway, a iron brazier in her hands, its coals still glowing red. She swung it with a strength that belied her thin frame. The assassin shrieked as the burning coals scattered across her back. Her blue dress caught fire. She dropped the wire and rolled, screaming, trying to smother the flames. "Run!" Xia Zhu grabbed my arm and hauled me out of the room. We stumbled through the dark corridors of the cold palace, past empty rooms and cobwebbed halls, until we burst out into the night air. The courtyard was overgrown with weeds, the moon a sliver overhead. I collapsed against a crumbling wall, gasping, my blood trickling down my chin and staining my gray robe red. Xia Zhu was crying. "Mistress, mistress," I woke up and I heard noises, and I didn't know what to do, and I grabbed the brazier and... Xia Zhu. I grabbed her shoulders and forced her to look at me. "You saved my life. Do you understand? You saved my life. Now I need you to be brave for me one more time. Who else knows that you are my maid?" She blinked through her tears. No one. I mean, the eunuchs in the kitchen know, but they don't care. No one cares about us, mistress. We are nobody. Good. I released her and took a shaky breath. That is good. That means the assassin did not expect you to interfere. She was sent by someone who thought I would be alone. Someone who knows my routines. Someone who knew I was moved to the cold palace today and that I would be too exhausted to fight back. I thought furiously. In my first life, the Empress Dowager had been the one to publicly humiliate me on that first day. But she had not killed me then. She had wanted me alive, humiliated and broken, to serve as a lesson to other concubines. So who had sent the assassin, the Crown Prince's faction, the Third Prince, or someone else entirely? Someone whose name I hadn't even learned before I died the first time. You are shaking, Xiaozhu whispered. Mistress, your hands. I looked down. My fingers were trembling violently. It was not from fear, though fear was there. It was from rage. Someone had tried to erase me before I could even begin. Someone had decided that Luyu, the forgotten concubine of the Cold Palace, was dangerous enough to kill on sight. And that meant I had been dangerous in my first life too. I had simply never known it. I had died thinking I was a victim of circumstance, a collateral casualty of a war I had tried to avoid. But assassins did not waste their time on collateral. Assassins were expensive. Assassins were targeted. Someone had wanted me dead 3 years ago, and someone had sent another assassin to finish the job the moment I woke up in this new life. The question was why. We cannot stay here, I said, forcing my voice steady. The assassin may have companions. If she does not return to her master, they will send others. We need to find shelter. We need to find allies. But where? Mistress Xiaozhu's face was pale in the moonlight. Everyone in this palace either fears the Empress Dowager or serves the princes. No one will help a fallen concubine. No one. I reached into the folds of my robe. My fingers closed around a small, hard object. A jade pendant, given to me years ago by a man I had met only once, a young physician named Lin Jing, who had been grateful for a kindness I had shown his dying sister. In my first life, I had forgotten about that pendant. I had tossed it into a drawer and never thought of it again. But now, in this new life, it was the only connection I had to anyone outside the palace's poisonous core. Take this, I said, pressing the pendant into Xiaozhu's hand. Go to the Imperial Medical Bureau. Find physician Lin Jing. Tell him that Luyu needs his help. Tell him that the debt he owes me is due tonight. Xiaozhu stared at the pendant. Mistress, I cannot leave you here alone. The assassin, she is either dead or fled. And if she is not dead, she will come back for me, not for you. You are faster than I am and smaller. You can move through the shadows without being seen. Go. Now. And do not stop until you find him. Xiaozhu hesitated, her face a battlefield of fear and loyalty. Then she tucked the pendant into her sleeve and ran. I turned back to the cold palace. The building loomed dark and silent, the doors still hanging open where we had fled. I forced myself to walk back inside. Not toward my room, never again toward that room, but toward the small kitchen in the back. My hands were still shaking as I lit a candle from the dying embers of the hearth. I found a knife, rusted but sharp enough. I found a length of rope. I found a heavy iron pot that I could use as a weapon if needed. And then I waited. The minutes crawled by like hours. Every creak of the old wood made me flinch. Every gust of wind through the broken windows made me grip the knife tighter. I listened for footsteps, for the whisper of silk, for the faint metallic hiss of a wire being drawn taut. My heart pounded so loudly I was certain it would give me away. But no one came. When the door finally creaked open again, I nearly screamed. But it was Xiaozhu, her face streaked with sweat, a tall young man in physician's robes behind her. He carried a medical box and a lantern, and his eyes were sharp and wary. Concubine Lu. His voice was low and controlled. I came because you saved my sister's life 3 years ago. I do not know how you knew about her illness, or why you chose to help a stranger. But I pay my debts. What is happening here? I lowered the knife. My legs gave out beneath me. I collapsed onto a broken stool and looked up at him, at his calm face, at the flickering lantern light, at the thin thread of hope that had just walked through the door. Someone tried to kill me tonight, I said. And I think they will try again. I need a place to hide. I need information. And I need to know who sent that assassin. Can you help me? Lin Jing studied me for a long moment. Then he set down his medical box and knelt beside me, examining the wound on my chin with practiced hands. I can hide you, he said quietly. I can find you information. But you need to tell me everything. From the beginning. And I need to know why someone would want a disgraced concubine dead so badly that they would send a professional killer to a cold palace on her first night. I opened my mouth to answer. But before I could speak, a distant bell began to toll. The palace alarm bell. The sound that meant something was very, very wrong. Xia Zhu gasped. Lin Jing's face went pale. That's the inner palace alarm, he said. Something has happened. Something big. I looked out the broken window. In the distance, I could see flames licking the sky from the direction of the Empress Dowager's quarters. Orange and red and hungry. And I knew, with a certainty that made my blood freeze in my veins, that this was no coincidence. The assassin's attempt on my life and the fire in the Empress Dowager's quarters were connected. Someone was cleaning house tonight. And I was not the only name on their list. I turned to Lin Jing. My voice was steady, even though my heart was screaming. Take me to the library, I said. Now. Before the flames reach us. There is something in the library that I need to see. Something that will tell us who ordered my death. And if I am right, it will tell us who is trying to burn this palace to the ground. Lin Jing hesitated for only a second. Then he nodded. We ran into the night, the flames growing brighter behind us. And I vowed, as the wind whipped my hair across my face, that I would not die again without knowing the truth. This time, I would uncover the puppet master behind the curtain. This time, I would not be a victim. This time, I would be the one pulling the strings. The library was a maze of towering shelves and dust-choked aisles, the kind of place where secrets went to die. I had spent countless hours here in my first life, hiding from the palace's endless intrigues, burying my nose in poetry and pretending the world outside didn't exist. But I had never come here at night, with the smell of smoke curling through the windows and a physician's lantern casting jumping shadows across the floor. Which section? Lin Jing whispered, his voice tight with urgency. Behind us, the distant crackle of the fire was growing louder. The Empress Dowager's quarters were fully ablaze now, and the wind was carrying the flames toward the eastern wing. Toward us. Imperial records, I said, my feet already moving. The red scrolls. The ones sealed with the late emperor's personal crest. Lin Jing grabbed my arm. Those are restricted. Only the emperor and the grand secretary have access. If we are caught, we will be dead either way. I cut him off. The fire is a distraction. Someone is using it to cover their tracks. And I need to see those records before they burn too. I pulled free and ran between the shelves, my fingers tracing the leather spines. My mind was racing. In my first life, I had stumbled upon a fragment of a rumor, whispered between two eunuchs in the garden, about a set of secret ledgers that recorded every bribe, every threat, every assassination order passed through the palace corridors. I had dismissed it at the time as idle gossip. But now, with an assassin's wire still fresh in my memory and the Empress Dowager's quarters turning to ash, I knew that rumor had been true. Xia Zhu caught up with me, her face flushed from running. Mistress, the guards are mobilizing. They are going to seal the inner palace. We have maybe half an hour before they start searching every room. Half an hour is enough, I said, though my heart was hammering. Lin Jing, the crest, do you have any way to open a sealed scroll without breaking the wax? He hesitated, then reached into his medical box. He pulled out a thin, curved instrument, like a miniature spatula, and a small vial of oil. I use this for delicate procedures. It can soften wax without cracking it. But if the seal is enchanted. It's not enchanted, I said. The late emperor trusted steel and paper, not spells. Just hurry. He set to work on the locked cabinet while Xia Zhu and I stood guard. Through the windows, I could see the glow of the fire reflected in the palace ponds. The bell had stopped tolling, which meant either the danger had passed or the bell tower had been overrun. I did not dare to hope for the former. The lock clicked open. Lin Jing pulled out a stack of red scrolls, their seals intact. I grabbed the one marked with the year of my entry into the palace and unrolled it on the nearest table. The handwriting was small, cramped, the kind used by clerks who did not want to be read. I scanned it quickly, my eyes searching for names, dates, anything that connected to me. For a long moment, I found nothing. Just the usual records of grain allotments and servant assignments. Then I saw it. Lu Yu, concubine of the 4th rank, the entry read. Recommended by consort on the 15th of the 1st month. Gifts received. Pearl hairpins from the crown prince's household, silk bolts from the 3rd prince's estate, a jade pendant from an unknown physician. Status: suspicious. Note: she has been observed meeting with a servant of the Grand Secretary's office on 3 occasions. Potential informant. Recommendation: monitor. Further action: pending approval. My blood turned to ice. Consorta. The Crown Prince's mother. She had been the one to recommend me. In my first life, I had believed it was chance, a random selection from a pool of eligible women. But it had not been random. She had placed me in the palace deliberately. She had made me a pawn before I even knew the game was being played. And the suspicious label. The meetings with the Grand Secretary's office. I had never met with anyone from that office. I had never even spoken to the Grand Secretary. But someone had wanted the records to show that I had. Someone had been building a case against me long before I ever made any moves. Someone was setting you up, Lin Jing said, reading over my shoulder. His voice was grim. They wanted you to look like a spy. But for whom? The Grand Secretary was loyal to the 3rd prince, I said slowly. If someone wanted me to appear connected to him, that would make me a target for the Crown Prince's faction. But if someone wanted me to appear connected to the Crown Prince, they would have used Consort Da's name, not the Grand Secretary's. Unless the goal was to make you look like a double agent, Xia Zhu piped up. A woman working for both sides. That would make everyone want you dead. I looked at her. She was trembling, but her eyes were sharp. She was smarter than I had ever given her credit for. Exactly, I said. Which means the person who ordered my death was not on either side. They were above both sides. Someone who wanted to destabilize the factions by creating a common enemy. A target that would unite them in suspicion. The Empress Dowager's face flashed in my mind. She was the only one who sat above both princes, the only one who could orchestrate a fire in her own quarters as cover for an assassination spree. But she had been publicly humiliating me, not killing me. Unless that humiliation had been a mask, a way to keep me isolated and vulnerable while she prepared the final blow. No, I muttered. She wouldn't burn her own home. She is too vain. Too proud. She would never sacrifice her treasures just to kill one concubine. Unless the fire is not hers, Lin Jing said quietly. Unless she is the victim, not the orchestrator. I went still. The fire had started in her quarters. If she was inside when it began, we need to go to the Empress Dowager's compound, I said. Now. If she is dead, the palace will fall into chaos. If she is alive, she will know who started the fire. Either way, we need to see what is left. Lin Jing started to protest, but I was already rolling up the scroll and tucking it into my robe. The red wax seal cracked and crumbled, but I didn't care. The evidence was inside my mind now, burned into my memory. We moved through the shadows, keeping to the edges of the courtyards. The fire was closer now, the heat palpable. I could see servants running with buckets, their faces streaked with soot. Guards were everywhere, but they were focused on the flames, not on 3 figures slipping through the darkness. The Empress Dowager's compound was a ruin. The main hall had collapsed, sending sparks spiraling into the night. The gardens were trampled, the fish pond blackened with ash. And in the middle of it all, surrounded by weeping maids and frantic eunuchs, stood the Empress Dowager herself. She was alive. Her robe was singed, her hair loose and wild, but she was standing. She was screaming orders, her voice cracking with rage and fear. Find him. Find him and bring me his head. I want his head on a pike by dawn. I pulled Lin Jing and Xia Zhu into the shadow of a burned-out pavilion. My heart was pounding. She was alive. That changed everything. If she had started the fire herself, she would be playing the victim, weeping and helpless. But she was not weeping. She was hunting. Who is she looking for? Xiaozhu whispered. I watched as the Empress Dowager grabbed a eunuch by the collar and spat in his face. The physician. The one who told my ladies to take the sleeping draught. He was the one who barricaded the doors. Bring him to me, and bring him alive. I want to watch him burn. A physician. A sleeping draught. Someone had drugged the Empress Dowager's attendants and locked them in the burning building. Someone had tried to kill her, just as someone had tried to kill me. And there was only one physician in the palace who had access to sleeping draughts and the authority to prescribe them to the Empress Dowager's ladies. Old physician Fong. I grabbed Lin Jing's arm. Fong. Where is he? Lin Jing's face went pale. He was promoted to the Empress Dowager's personal physician last month. I did not think anything of it. He has always been ambitious, but where is he now? I do not know. He was supposed to attend the evening rounds, but he never appeared. I assumed he was with the Empress Dowager. The firelight flickered in his eyes. He was connecting the same dots I was. Physician Fong was a creature of the Grand Secretary, and the Grand Secretary was a creature of the Third Prince. But the Grand Secretary had been setting me up as a spy for his faction, not targeting the Empress Dowager. Unless the Grand Secretary is dead, I said suddenly. That was the first message. The scroll I found, it was sealed with his name. But the handwriting was different. Someone else copied his records. Someone else made me look like a spy. And then that same someone tried to kill the Empress Dowager to create chaos. Lin Jing nodded slowly. Who benefits from chaos? The Crown Prince, I said. If the Empress Dowager dies, the Crown Prince's grandmother is no longer a check on his ambitions. But if she dies in a fire that is blamed on the Third Prince, he gains public sympathy and a righteous reason to attack. And who benefits from your death? I met his eyes. The same person. Because a dead concubine who appears to have been a double agent would be a perfect scapegoat. They would find my body, the forged scrolls, and pin the assassination on me, making it look like the Third Prince ordered the fire and I was his co-conspirator. The Crown Prince would have his excuse for war. It was beautiful in its cruelty. A perfect plan, 3-layered, each piece designed to fall into place like a puzzle. But there was one flaw. The assassin had not killed me. And now I knew who had sent her. The Crown Prince would not have used a wire. He preferred poison, slow and quiet. The Third Prince would have used a sword, direct and bold. But an assassin with a wire, working at night, without witnesses, that was the signature of the person who had no faction at all. I turned to Lin Jing. Who in this palace is the most invisible? Who walks through every room without being seen, hears every conversation without being remembered? He thought for a moment. The shadow eunuchs. They are servants of no one, attached to nothing. They clean the corridors after midnight. They light the lamps before dawn. They have no names, no faces. And they are perfect killers. He nodded grimly. Xiaozhu gasped. Mistress, there is one shadow eunuch who always watched you. I saw him in the corridors, in the gardens, even at the cold palace gate. He was always there. I thought it was coincidence, but... You are right, I breathed. It was not coincidence. He was reporting on me. And tonight, he tried to finish the job. I closed my eyes and let the pieces fall into place. The shadow eunuch was the assassin. The fire was the Crown Prince's doing. The forged scrolls were the Grand Secretary's work, or someone who had access to his office. And the thread that tied it all together, the Emperor, I said. He is dying. The Crown Prince knows it. The Third Prince knows it. And someone is racing to control the succession before the Emperor breathes his last. I grabbed Lin Jing by the wrist. We need to get to the Emperor's chambers. Not to save him, he is already beyond saving. But to see who is standing at his bedside. Because that person is the one who will inherit this mess. And that person is the one who will decide whether I live or die. Lin Jing pulled back. Are you insane? The Emperor's chambers are surrounded by guards. We will be cut down before we reach the door. Not if we look like we belong there. I turned to Xiaozhu. Do you still have that brazier? She nodded, confused. Start a small fire. A distraction. Just enough to pull the guards away from the western gate. Lin Jing, do you have any bandages and a clean robe? He nodded slowly. In my box. Good. I am going to be a wounded physician's assistant, rushing to the Emperor's side with medical supplies. And you are going to be my frantic, terrified escort. Xiaozhu, when the fire starts, run toward the eastern wall and scream for help. Do not stop screaming until the guards come. Then disappear into the crowd. Her face was pale, but she nodded. I can do it, mistress. Then go. She ran. Lin Jing handed me a clean white robe and a stack of bandages. I pulled the robe over my gray dress, tucked my hair into a cap, and smeared ash across my cheeks. In the flickering firelight, I looked like any other servant. And then we ran toward the Emperor's chambers, the fire rising behind us. The night alive with screams and the clang of bells. The guards at the western gate were distracted by a sudden burst of flame from the eastern corner, Xia Zhu's handiwork. They ran past us without a second glance. We slipped through the gate and into the inner sanctum, the heart of the palace. The Emperor's chambers were quiet. Too quiet. The guards outside had been pulled away, but the doors were unbarred. I pushed them open and stepped inside. The Emperor lay on his bed, pale and still. His eyes were closed, his breath shallow. At his bedside knelt a figure in red robes, their face obscured by a hood. I reached out and grabbed the hood. I tore it back. And I stared into the face of the one person I had never suspected. Consort. I breathed. You. She looked at me with cold, dead eyes. And in her hand, she held a half-empty vial of poison. Consort did not flinch. She did not scream or drop the vial or call for guards. She simply looked at me with those flat, empty eyes, and she smiled. It was a smile that had been practiced in mirrors, honed over decades of court intrigue. It was a smile that had won her the Emperor's favor and the Crown Prince's loyalty. And it was a smile that told me, in no uncertain terms, that I was already dead. Concubine Liu, she said, her voice as smooth as poisoned honey. How clever of you to survive the night. I had hoped the shadow eunuch would be more thorough. But I suppose that is what happens when you hire from the bottom of the barrel. I stood frozen in the doorway, Lin Jing's hand gripping my sleeve. The Emperor was behind her, his chest barely rising, his face waxen and slack. I could see the faint tremor in his fingers, the blue tinge to his lips. The poison was already in his blood. Consort had been feeding it to him slowly, drop by drop, for weeks. Tonight, she had simply finished the job. Why? The word came out of my mouth before I could stop it. It was a stupid question. I already knew why, but I needed to hear her say it. I needed to buy time. Consort rose to her feet, setting the vial down on the bedside table with deliberate care. She brushed the dust from her crimson robes and regarded me as one might regard a particularly stubborn insect. Because he was weak, she said. Because he loved his sons more than his empire. Because he would have let the third prince tear this country apart rather than name my son as his heir. And because I am tired of waiting. The fire, I said. The Empress Dowager. You tried to kill her too. Tried. Consort's smile widened, but her eyes remained ice cold. I should have used a double dose. But the old hag is stubborn. She will die eventually. The flames took her lungs. She will cough and wheeze for a few weeks, and then she will join her husband in the afterlife. In the meantime, she will blame the third prince, and my son will have the perfect excuse to march on his brother's territory. She took a step toward me. Lin Jing shifted behind me, his hand moving toward his medical box. I saw Consort's gaze flick to him, dismissive and unconcerned. You are wondering why I tried to kill you, she continued. A nobody. A concubine who spent her days reading poetry and avoiding court functions. You were nothing to me. Until you survived the tea. The tea. The Empress Dowager's test. Consort had been watching that day. She had seen me refuse to grovel. She had seen me accuse the Empress Dowager of poison. And she had realized, in that instant, that I was not the docile, forgettable woman I had pretended to be. Your neutrality was a lie, Consort said. You were playing a game. And I do not tolerate other players at my table. So I made sure the records showed you as a spy for the Grand Secretary. I made sure the shadow eunuch was watching you. And tonight, I made sure you would die in your sleep, a convenient scapegoat for the fire and the Emperor's death. A disgraced concubine, desperate and vengeful, who poisoned the emperor and tried to burn the Empress Dowager alive. It would have been perfect. It was perfect, I said, until I walked through that door. Her smile faltered for just a fraction of a second. That hesitation told me everything I needed to know. She had not anticipated this. She had not planned for me to be standing here, in a servant's robe, with the ashes of her fire still on my cheeks. You cannot stop me, she said. The emperor is dead. The Empress Dowager is dying. The crown prince is already marching his army toward the capital. The third prince will be blamed for the fire. And you will be found with this vial in your hand, your fingers stained with the poison that killed the emperor. I will scream for the guards, and they will believe me. Because I am Consort Da, mother of the next emperor. And you are no one. She opened her mouth to shout. But I was faster. I lunged forward and grabbed the vial from the table. I did not throw it. I did not break it. I uncorked it and held it to my lips. Call the guards, I said, my voice steady. Call them now. But before they arrive, I will drink every drop of this poison. And then you will have no murderer to blame. Just a dead concubine and a dead emperor and a fire that no one can explain. Your son will be crowned in chaos, not triumph. And the first act of his reign will be stained with the suspicion that his mother murdered the emperor. Consort Da's eyes widened. For the first time, I saw genuine fear flicker across her features. The kind of fear that came from facing an opponent who was willing to die. She had not expected that. She had expected me to grovel, to beg, to bargain for my life. She did not know that I had already died once. And death had taught me that there were worse things than losing my life. There was losing my agency. There was losing my choices. There was losing the chance to rewrite the story that had already been written for me. You are insane, she whispered. Perhaps, I said. But the insane are also unpredictable. And you cannot predict what I will do next. So here's my offer. You will let me leave this room. You will tell the guards that the emperor died peacefully, of natural causes. You will ensure that the records of my past are amended. And you will call off the shadow eunuch. In return, I will walk away from this palace tonight. I will disappear. I will never be seen or heard from again. She stared at me. The seconds stretched like hours. The emperor's breath had stopped. The room was silent except for the faint crackle of distant flames. You are asking me to trust you, she said finally. I am asking you to be practical, I replied. You have won. The emperor is dead. Your son will be emperor. Killing me now only creates complications. Let me go, and I vanish. Keep me here, and I become a ghost that haunts your reign. I saw the calculation in her eyes. She was weighing the risks. A dead concubine who disappeared from the palace was one thing. A dead concubine who was found in the emperor's chambers with a poison vial was another. She had wanted a neat, tidy scapegoat. I was offering her something more complicated, but also more controllable. A loose thread that could be cut later, on her terms. You will leave tonight, she said. You will take your maid and your physician. You will never return to the capital. If I hear even a whisper of your name in any court, I will have you hunted down and killed. Slowly, I lowered the vial. I did not hand it back to her. I tucked it into my sleeve. One more thing, I said. The shadow eunuch. The one you sent to kill me. I want him. Her eyes narrowed. Why? Because I need a servant, I said. And he is the only one in this palace who is truly invisible. You owe me that much. For the years of surveillance. For the attempted murder. For the life you tried to steal. She hesitated. Then she laughed. It was a brittle, hollow sound, like ice cracking on a frozen lake. Take him, she said. He has served his purpose. He is nothing but a liability now. But know this, Luyu. If he fails you, if he betrays you, do not expect me to mourn. He is a tool. And tools can be replaced. She turned her back on me. It was a deliberate gesture of dismissal, a reminder that I was beneath her notice. But I saw the tightness in her shoulders, the way her hands clenched at her sides. She was afraid. Not of me, not yet. But of the precedent I had set. She had never lost a game before. And tonight, she had not won. Lin Jing tugged my sleeve. We need to go. Now. The guards will be returning soon. I nodded. I took one last look at the emperor's body, so still and cold on the bed. He had been a weak man, a tired man, a man who had loved his sons more than his empire. But he had not deserved to die alone, with his murderer standing over him. I turned and walked out of the room. The corridors were chaos. Servants ran past us with buckets and blankets, their faces streaked with soot. The fire was still burning, though it had been contained to the eastern wing. The Empress Dowager's compound was a ruin, and the old woman herself was being carried to a spare chamber, coughing and gasping, her robes torn and her dignity in shreds. I felt nothing. No pity. No satisfaction. Just a cold, clear determination. We found Xiaozhu by the eastern wall, crouched in the shadows. She was trembling, but she was alive. When she saw me, she burst into tears and threw her arms around my neck. Mistress, I thought you were dead. I saw the guards running toward the Emperor's chambers, and I heard screaming, and I am fine, I said, pulling her to her feet. But we are leaving. Tonight. We are walking out of this palace, and we are never coming back. Her eyes went wide. Leaving, but where will we go? We have no family, no money, no, the shadow eunuch, I said. He has money. He has connections. And he is coming with us. I looked at Lin Jing. His face was pale, but his eyes were steady. He nodded once. If you are leaving, I am leaving with you, he said. My sister is dead. I have nothing left in this city. And you are the only person who ever saw me as more than a tool. I did not argue. I did not have time. We moved through the palace like ghosts, keeping to the back corridors and abandoned courtyards. The shadow eunuch was waiting for us at the northern gate, his face expressionless, his hands hidden in his sleeves. He was as thin as a reed, with sallow skin and eyes that reflected no light. He looked like a man who had never been seen, never been remembered. You are mine now, I said. Consort De gave you to me. If you try to kill me or betray me, I will make sure you regret it. But if you serve me well, I will give you something you have never had. A name. A past. A future. He did not speak. He simply bowed his head. We walked through the gate and into the night. The flames were dying behind us. The bells had stopped ringing. The palace was falling silent, settling into the quiet that follows disaster. I did not look back. I had spent my first life looking back, regretting, wishing I had done things differently. But this was my second life. And I was done with regret. We walked for hours, through the empty streets of the capital, past shuttered shops and darkened homes. The moon was full and cold above us, casting silver light on the cobblestones. I did not know where we were going. I did not have a plan. I only knew that I had survived. Again. But as we reached the edge of the city, I stopped. The shadow eunuch was behind me, silent and watchful. Lin Jing was at my side, his medical box clutched to his chest. Xiaozhu was holding my hand, her fingers cold and trembling. And somewhere behind us, in the palace we had left behind, Consort De was crowning her son emperor. The war was still coming. The crown prince would still march on the third prince's territory. The empire would still bleed. But I would not be there to see it. I had chosen another path. Not neutrality, not this time. I had chosen survival. And survival meant walking away from the game entirely, leaving the board behind, finding a new table to play on. We need to find shelter, Lin Jing said. The countryside is dangerous at night. Bandits. Wolves. You name it. I know a place, I said. A village to the east. It is small and forgotten. No one will look for us there. We set out again, our footsteps echoing in the empty night. I did not know what the future held. I did not know if Consort De would keep her word. I did not know if the shadow eunuch would remain loyal. I did not know if I would ever feel safe again. But I knew one thing. I was still breathing. And as long as I was breathing, I had the power to choose. The village appeared at dawn, a cluster of thatched roofs and smoke-blackened chimneys huddled in a valley. It was humble and poor and utterly unremarkable. It was perfect. We found an abandoned cottage on the edge of the village, its roof half collapsed, its walls covered in ivy. It would take work to make it livable. But work was something I had never been afraid of. I turned to the shadow eunuch. What is your name? He looked at me surprised. I do not have one. Then I will give you one. You will be called Wei. It means guardian. Because that is what you will be. Not a killer. A guardian. He blinked. For a moment, I saw something flicker in his empty eyes. Something that might have been gratitude. "Thank you," he said. His voice was rusty, unused to speaking. I nodded. Then I walked into the cottage and began to sweep the dust from the floor. The sun rose over the valley, warm and golden. Birds sang in the trees. A dog barked in the distance. It was peaceful. It was safe. It was everything I had ever wanted. But I was not foolish enough to believe it would last. The war was coming. The crown prince and the third prince would tear each other apart. The empire would burn. And somewhere in the chaos, Consort Da would remember me. She would remember the woman who had walked out of her chambers with her poison vial and her secrets. She would remember the loose thread she had left untied. I gripped the broom handle and kept sweeping. I had time. A little time. And I would use every moment of it to prepare. Not for war, not for revenge. For the only thing that had ever mattered. Survival. The cottage took 3 weeks to make livable. 3 weeks of patching the roof with scavenged tiles, of clearing the ivy that had swallowed the walls, of digging a new well when the old one turned foul. 3 weeks of waking before dawn and working until my hands blistered and my back screamed. It was the hardest labor I had ever done. And it was the most peaceful I had ever felt. Wei, the shadow eunuch, proved to be invaluable. His hands, once trained to handle wires and poisons, now handled hammers and nails with equal precision. He rarely spoke, but when he did, his words were sharp and practical. He built a new door for the cottage. He reinforced the windows. He dug a trench around the perimeter and filled it with sharpened stakes, camouflaged with leaves and grass. Old habit, he said when I raised an eyebrow. I have spent my life learning how to enter places unseen. Now I am learning how to keep people out. Lin Jing took over the garden. He had a natural gift for growing things, coaxing life from the stubborn soil. Within 2 weeks, we had rows of cabbages and radishes, and a patch of medicinal herbs that he guarded like a dragon hoarding gold. He also set up a small clinic in the front room, treating the villagers for fevers and broken bones in exchange for eggs and grain. They came to trust him. They came to trust us. Xiaozhu thrived. Away from the palace's suffocating hierarchies, she blossomed into a confident young woman. She took charge of the cooking and the cleaning, and she started a small trade with the village women, exchanging our surplus herbs for cloth and thread. She talked more than she had ever talked in the palace. She laughed. She even sang, sometimes, while she worked. And I watched them all, and I felt something I had not felt in 2 lifetimes. Hope. Small and fragile, like a seedling pushing through cracked earth. But real. The news from the capital came slowly, carried by traveling merchants and wandering monks. Consort Da's son had been crowned emperor. The third prince had denounced the coronation as illegitimate and raised his banner in the south. The empire was at war. Armies marched and countermarched. Villages burned. Families fled. But our village was too small and too poor to attract attention. We were a dot on no map, a footnote in no ledger. The war passed us by like a storm that had lost its fury. For 3 months, we lived in that bubble of peace. I let myself believe, foolishly, that it might last. I let myself forget, recklessly, that Consort Da had made a promise she had no intention of keeping. The first sign that our peace was ending came on a cold autumn morning. I was in the garden, pulling up the last of the radishes, when I heard the sound of hooves on the road. Many hooves. Too many for a merchant or a monk. I dropped the radishes and ran to the cottage. Wei was already at the window, his face taut and pale. "Riders," he said. 20, maybe 30. Armed. "Imperial?" I asked. He shook his head. "Too ragged. Too fast. These are deserters. Or bandits." Xiaozhu was trembling, but she did not scream. She had learned to be brave in the months we had been here. She grabbed the iron poker from the hearth and stood by the door. Lin Jing came in from the clinic, his face grim. "The villagers are hiding in the cellars." I told them to stay quiet. I nodded. "We do the same. We stay hidden. We do not engage. They will pass through." Wei looked at me. And if they do not pass through, I did not answer. I did not have to. The riders came to a halt in the village square. I could hear their shouts, their laughter, the crash of a door being kicked in. They were not looking for supplies. They were looking for entertainment. And a village of farmers and shepherds was a poor match for 30 armed men. Wei moved to the door. I will draw them away. Lead them into the forest. You will have time to escape. No, I said. You stay. We all stay. We have been hiding for too long. It is time to fight. He stared at me. With what we have, one knife, one iron poker, and a handful of garden tools. With that, I said, pointing to the small pouch Lin Jing had left on the table. It was filled with dried herbs, the ones he used for his most potent sedatives. If we can get them to drink, we can put them to sleep. Then we take their weapons and their horses. Lin Jing's face lit up with understanding. I can brew a strong batch. Strong enough to knock out an ox. But we need to get them to drink it first. I looked at Xiaozhu. She was pale, but her jaw was set. I can offer them water, she said. I am small. I look harmless. They will not suspect a girl. Xiaozhu, I started. I can do this, mistress. I am not the same girl who cried in the cold palace. Let me do this. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I nodded. We moved quickly. Lin Jing brewed the sedative in a large pot, adding honey and ginger to mask the bitter taste. Xiaozhu poured it into a wooden bucket and carried it out to the square, her head bowed, her shoulders hunched. She looked like nothing more than a frightened servant girl. I watched from the window as the riders surrounded her. They laughed and jeered, but they were thirsty. They had been riding hard. They took the bucket and passed it around, drinking greedily. Wei counted under his breath. 1, 2, 3. The first rider slumped in his saddle. Then another. Then a third. Within minutes, half of them were unconscious. The others drew their swords, shouting in confusion. But the sedative was already in their veins. They staggered and fell, one by one. Wei moved like a ghost. He slipped out the door and across the square, collecting swords and daggers from the fallen men. Lin Jing followed with a rope, binding wrists and ankles. Xiaozhu stood in the middle of the chaos, her hands shaking but her chin lifted. I walked out to join them. The village square was littered with sleeping bandits. The villagers were emerging from their cellars, their faces a mixture of fear and wonder. And then I saw the last rider. He had not drunk from the bucket. He had been watching from the edge of the square, his horse restless beneath him. He was young, barely 20, with a scar across his cheek and eyes that burned with cold intelligence. He drew his sword and pointed it at me. You are Lu Yu. I froze. No one in this village knew my name. No one in this village knew who I was. Who sent you? I asked. He smiled. It was a cruel, knowing smile. Consort sends her regards. She said you might have hidden here. She said I would recognize you by the way you stand. Straight-backed. Unafraid. Like you have nothing to lose. Wei stepped in front of me, his new sword raised. Lin Jing moved to my side. Xiaozhu grabbed the iron poker. But the young rider did not attack. He sheathed his sword and dismounted. I am not here to kill you, he said. I am here to deliver a message. Consort is dead. The Empress Dowager survived the fire. She is leading a faction against the new emperor. The war is not going well. And the crown prince, the new emperor, he needs you. I stared at him. Needs me? He tried to have me killed. His mother tried to have me killed. Why would I help him? The young rider shrugged. Because the Empress Dowager is winning. She has the support of the northern generals. She has the loyalty of the palace guard. And she has a very long memory. She remembers who spilled tea on her robe. She remembers who accused her of poison. She has put a price on your head, Lu Yu. A large one. The world tilted around me. The Empress Dowager. Alive. And hunting me. Consort was protecting you, the rider continued. She kept your name out of the records. She made sure the Empress Dowager did not know where you had gone. But now Consort is dead. And the Empress Dowager is coming for you. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. Consort had been my enemy. She had tried to kill me. And yet, in her own twisted way, she had also been my shield. Her death had left me exposed. Why should I trust you? I asked. You rode with bandits. You were going to pillage this village. He laughed. The bandits were a cover. I needed to travel unseen. I joined them for protection. and I was never going to let them harm the villagers. I was watching, waiting. I would have stepped in if you had not handled them yourself. I did not believe him. But I did not have to. The damage was already done. The Empress Dowager was coming. And I was not ready. What do you want from me? I said finally. The rider's eyes gleamed. The new emperor wants you to come back. He wants you to help him win the war. He will give you anything. Title, land, power, you name it. And if I refuse, then you will die, Liu. The Empress Dowager will find you. She will kill everyone in this village. And she will take you back to the palace to make an example of you. You have no choice. I looked at Wei. He was watching the rider with cold, assessing eyes. He had not sheathed his sword. He is telling the truth, Wei said quietly. I know the Empress Dowager. She does not forgive. She does not forget. She will burn this village to the ground just to send a message. Lin Jing stepped forward. We can fight. We can run. We can. We cannot, I said. She has armies. We have a garden and a cottage. We cannot fight. We cannot run fast enough. But we can bargain. I turned to the rider. Tell the emperor I will come back. But on my terms. I want my own household. I want my own guard. I want the shadow eunuch to remain by my side. And I want a written pardon, signed and sealed, for any crimes I may have been accused of in the past. The rider nodded. That can be arranged. And I want the Empress Dowager to be stripped of her title. Publicly. Before I set foot in the capital. That is non-negotiable. The rider's eyes widened. That is impossible. She is the mother of the late emperor. She is a murderer, I said. She tried to burn the palace down. She tried to kill the emperor. She has been conspiring with the third princess faction. I have evidence. The scrolls. The records. I saw them with my own eyes. If the emperor agrees to my terms, I will give him everything I know. If he does not, I will go to the Empress Dowager myself and offer her the same deal. The rider was silent for a long moment. Then he laughed. It was a genuine laugh, full of surprise and admiration. You are insane, he said. But you are also brilliant. I will deliver your message. But be warned. The Empress Dowager is already on the move. She will reach this village in 3 days. If you are not gone by then, you will not have to worry about bargaining. He mounted his horse and rode away. The bandits were still unconscious in the square, their swords and horses now ours. I turned to my small band of companions. Xiaozhu was crying. Lin Jing was pale. Wei was staring at me with something that might have been respect. We leave tonight, I said. We take the horses. We take the weapons. We go back to the capital. And we finish what we started. Xiaozhu wiped her tears. Mistress, we were free. We had a home. We had a borrowed life, I said. And it was beautiful. But it was never going to last. The Empress Dowager will not stop hunting me. Neither will the Emperor. The only way to survive is to become indispensable. To make myself so valuable that no one dares to kill me. And to make myself so dangerous that no one dares to ignore me. I looked around at the cottage, the garden, the rows of cabbages and radishes. I had loved it here. I had been happy here. But happiness was a luxury I could not afford. We ride at midnight, I said. Pack everything. We will not return. The journey to the capital took 4 days. We rode hard, stopping only to rest the horses and eat. The roads were treacherous, choked with refugees and deserters. We passed burned villages and abandoned farms. The war had taken its toll. But we also passed something else. Military camps. Supply convoys. Messenger riders. The empire was mobilizing. And the new emperor was not just defending his throne. He was preparing to strike. When we reached the capital, the gates were closed. Armed guards patrolled the walls. The city was on lockdown. I rode to the gate and held up the rider's token. I am here by the emperor's invitation. Let me pass. The guards looked at me skeptically. But the token was genuine, and they had been warned to expect me. The gates creaked open. The palace was different from the one I had left. There were guards everywhere, their faces hard and wary. The courtyards were empty of servants. The gardens were overgrown and neglected. The war had drained the life from the capital. And waiting for me in the throne room was the new emperor. He was young, barely older than I was, with his mother's cold eyes and his father's weak chin. He wore a crown that was too heavy for his head, and he looked like a man who had not slept in weeks. Luyu, he said. His voice was thin, reedy. You came. I came, I said. But I want to hear you say it. The pardon. The title. The guard. Everything I asked for. He nodded. Granted. All of it. But I need something in return. The Empress Dowager has taken control of the Northern Army. She is marching on the capital. She has 3 times the men I have. I need you to stop her. Me, I laughed. I am a concubine from the cold palace. What can I do against an army? He leaned forward, his eyes burning with desperation. You can talk. You can negotiate. You can find the weakness in her faction and exploit it. My mother, Consort Da, she told me before she died. She said you were the only one who could see the whole board. She said you could win wars without fighting. She said you were a weapon. And I need a weapon. His voice cracked on the last word. He was afraid. He was terrified. And that fear made him dangerous. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I knelt. I will do what I can, I said. But I will not fight for you. I will fight for myself. And if that means stopping the Empress Dowager, then so be it. He nodded, relief flooding his face. I will give you whatever you need. Men. Resources. Money. Just stop her. Please. I rose and walked out of the throne room. Wei was waiting for me in the corridor. What is your plan? He asked. I smiled. It was not a nice smile. I am going to talk to the Empress Dowager. And I am going to offer her a deal she cannot refuse. The Empress Dowager's camp was a sprawling tent city on the northern plains, 3 days' march from the capital. I rode toward it alone, with only Wei at my side. The new emperor had offered me an escort of 50 soldiers, but I had refused. An army would have been seen as a threat. 2 people, one of them a woman and the other a servant, would be seen as a curiosity. And curiosity was a door I could walk through. Wei had argued with me for an hour before we left. She will kill you on sight, he had said. She has a price on your head. She has no reason to listen to anything you say. She has every reason, I had replied. She is losing. The Northern Army is strong, but it is also hungry. The supply lines are stretched. The winter is coming. She cannot afford a siege. She needs a quick victory, and she does not have one. I am offering her an alternative. He had not been convinced. But he had come anyway. That was the thing about Wei. He had been trained to follow orders, but he had never been trained to believe in anything. I was the first person who had ever given him something to believe in. And he would follow me to the gates of hell if I asked. The camp guards stopped us at the perimeter. They were hardened soldiers, their faces scarred and weathered. They looked at me with suspicion, but they did not draw their weapons. I am Luyu, I said. I am here to see the Empress Dowager. Tell her I have a message from the new emperor. The guards exchanged glances. Then one of them turned and walked into the camp. Wei and I waited in silence, the cold wind biting at our faces. The minutes stretched into an hour. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the plains. I did not fidget. I did not pace. I stood still, my hands clasped in front of me, and I waited. Finally, the guard returned. The Empress Dowager will see you, he said. But you will be searched. And your servant will stay outside. Wei tensed beside me. I placed a hand on his arm. Do as they say, I murmured. I will be fine. He did not argue. He stepped back, his hands raised, letting the guards pat him down. They took his dagger, his rope, his small pouch of herbs. Then they stepped aside and let me pass. The Empress Dowager's tent was larger than the cottage I had lived in. It was lined with silk and furs, heated by braziers, lit by candles that smelled of sandalwood. She sat on a cushioned dais at the far end, wrapped in a heavy brocade robe, her face pale and thin from the months of war. The fire had scarred her. One side of her face was smooth and unmarked, but the other was a ruin of puckered flesh and melted skin. She wore a veil over the damaged side, but it did little to hide the damage. She was still the most terrifying woman I had ever met. Luyu, she said. Her voice was hoarse, damaged by the smoke she had inhaled. I should have you killed where you stand. You should, I agreed. But you won't. She raised an eyebrow. And why not it? Because you want to know why I am here. And you want to know what I know. And you want to know if I can help you win. She laughed. It was a harsh, grating sound, like stones grinding together. Help me when you are a concubine. A nobody. A woman who spilled tea on my robe and accused me of poison. You are nothing. I was nothing, I said. But I am not nothing anymore. I have the new emperor's ear. I have his trust. I have his written pardon and a title that makes me untouchable. And I have information that could end this war in a single day. She leaned forward, her one good eye narrowing. What information? I took a step closer. I know about the scrolls. The red scrolls in the Imperial Library. The ones that record every bribe, every threat, every assassination order passed through the palace corridors. I found them before I left. I read them. And I memorized them. The Empress Dowager's face went pale. The scarred side of her face twitched beneath the veil. You are lying, she said. Those scrolls are sealed. No one has access to them except the Emperor and the Grand Secretary. The Grand Secretary is dead, I said. And the Emperor is young and careless. His mother, Consort De, had copies made. I found them in her private chambers. I read every single one. I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. Those scrolls contain proof of your involvement in the late Emperor's assassination. They contain proof of your conspiracy with the Third Prince. They contain proof that you started the fire in your own quarters to cover your tracks. If I release that information, your faction will crumble. Your generals will abandon you. Your soldiers will desert. You will be left alone, with no army and no allies, to face the new Emperor's justice. The Empress Dowager's hands trembled on the arms of her chair. I saw the fear in her eyes. It was a deep, primal fear, the fear of a woman who had built her life on secrets and now faced the exposure of them all. You would not dare, she whispered. If you release that information, you will be implicated too. You were in the library. You handled the scrolls. I was a victim, I said. A pawn. A concubine who was framed and nearly killed. I have the evidence to prove it. The new emperor has already pardoned me. He has already declared me innocent of all charges. You, on the other hand, are the architect of this entire conspiracy. And the proof of your guilt is in my hands. She was silent for a long moment. The candles flickered. The wind howled outside the tent. I could hear the distant murmur of soldiers, the clank of armor, the stamp of horses. What do you want? She said finally. Her voice was flat, defeated. I want peace, I said. I want an end to this war. I want you to surrender to the new emperor. Publicly, with no conditions. And I want you to sign a confession, admitting your crimes. In return, I will not release the scrolls. I will destroy them. Your family will be spared. Your servants will be allowed to live. You will be exiled to a monastery, where you will spend the rest of your days in quiet contemplation. She stared at me. Then she laughed again. It was a bitter, broken sound. You are asking me to give up everything. My power. My title. My life's work. For what? For a monastery, for a few years of quiet prayer before I die, for your soul, I said. For the chance to be remembered as a woman who chose peace over pride. For the chance to die with dignity, instead of on a scaffold, with the crowd screaming for your blood. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she closed her eyes. The tears that slipped from beneath her lashes were the first genuine emotion I had ever seen from her. You are a monster, she said. A beautiful, terrible monster. You have taken everything from me. And you have done it without lifting a single weapon. I have done it because I had no choice, I said. You tried to kill me. You tried to burn me alive. You tried to destroy everything I loved. I am not a monster. I am a survivor. And survivors do what they must. She opened her eyes. They were red-rimmed, but dry now. I will surrender, she said. I will sign your confession. I will go to your monastery. But I have one condition. A small one. What is it? She smiled. It was a terrible smile, full of venom and spite. I want to see Consort De's grave. I want to spit on it. And I want you to tell me to my face that she is dead. I want to hear the words from your mouth. I felt a chill run down my spine. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. Consort De was dead. The young writer had said so. The new emperor had confirmed it. But the way the Empress Dowager spoke, The way her eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "Consort Da is dead," I said carefully. "She died of a fever 3 weeks ago." The new emperor confirmed it. The Empress Dowager laughed. It was a triumphant, gloating laugh, the laugh of a woman who had just won a victory she had been waiting for her entire life. "Consort Da is not dead," she said. "She is in my tent. She came to me 3 days ago. She offered me a deal. And I accepted." The tent flap opened. And Consort Da walked in. She was thinner than I remembered, her face gaunt and pale, her eyes rimmed with exhaustion. But she was alive. Very much alive. "Hello, Liu," she said. "Did you miss me?" I could not speak. My mind was racing, trying to piece together the puzzle. Consort Da had faked her death. She had come to the Empress Dowager. She had offered her a deal. And now they were standing together, united against me. "You see," the Empress Dowager said, "Consort Da and I have had our differences. She tried to kill me. I tried to kill her. It was a very messy relationship. But we both realized something. We both realized that you were the real threat. You, Liu. You, the nobody from the cold palace. You, the woman who survived assassination and fire and war. You, the woman who would not stay dead." Consort Da stepped forward. She was wearing a plain gray robe, the kind worn by servants, but her bearing was as regal as ever. "I offered the Empress Dowager a deal," she said. "I would give her the scrolls. The real scrolls. The ones that prove your involvement in everything. The forged documents. The poison tea. The fire. Everything. In return, she would help me take back the throne. My son is weak. He is easily controlled. But you, Liu, you're not. You are dangerous. And we both decided that you needed to be eliminated." I took a step back. My mind was screaming at me to run, but my legs would not move. "You were supposed to die in the village," the Empress Dowager said. "The young rider was not a messenger. He was an assassin. He was supposed to kill you and your companions. But you were too clever. You disarmed his bandits. You negotiated. You escaped. So we had to change our plans. We had to let you come here. We had to let you think you were winning. And now, finally, you're exactly where we want you." Consort Da smiled. It was the same cold, practiced smile I had seen in the Emperor's chambers. "Did you really think I would let you walk away?" she said. "Did you really think I would let you live? After everything you knew, you are a liability, Liu. A loose thread. And I am very, very good at cutting loose threads." She reached into her sleeve and pulled out a small vial. I recognized it immediately. It was the same vial I had taken from the Emperor's chambers. "The same poison. This is for you," she said. "A gift. A quick death. Painless, mostly. You will fall asleep, and you will not wake up. It is more than you deserve." I looked around the tent. The Empress Dowager was watching me with cold satisfaction. Consort Da was advancing slowly, the vial held out like an offering. There were no guards. No one to hear me scream. No one to save me. But there was one thing they had not counted on. I had left him outside, disarmed and searched. But I had also told him, before we left, that if I did not come out in 2 hours, he should find a way to create a distraction. Any distraction. And I had been inside for exactly 2 hours. The first explosion came from the east. A loud, sharp crack, followed by a plume of smoke. The second came from the west. The third from the north. The camp erupted into chaos. Soldiers ran in every direction, shouting and screaming. Horses bolted. Tents collapsed. Consort Da stumbled backward, the vial slipping from her fingers. I lunged for it, grabbing it before it hit the ground. I did not throw it. I did not break it. I held it up like a trophy. Your distraction, I said, has arrived. The Empress Dowager shrieked with rage. She grabbed a dagger from the table and lunged at me. I sidestepped, years of palace survival instincts kicking in, and she stumbled past me, crashing into a brazier. The hot coals scattered across the tent floor, igniting the silk and furs. The tent went up in flames in seconds. I ran. I burst out of the tent and into the chaos of the camp. Soldiers were everywhere, but they were too disoriented to stop me. I ran toward the eastern perimeter, where I knew Wei would be waiting. And there he was. Covered in soot, his face streaked with sweat, but alive. He was holding 2 horses, one of which was mine. To get on, he shouted. No. I did not argue. I swung onto the horse and kicked it into a gallop. Wei followed close behind. We rode through the burning camp, through the shouting soldiers, through the smoke and the fire and the chaos. Behind us, the Empress Dowager's tent collapsed into a pile of ash and sparks. I did not look back. I did not want to see if they had survived. I did not care. We rode for hours. I did not stop until the plains gave way to forest, and the forest gave way to hills. We found a small cave and hid there until dawn. Wei built a fire. I sat with my back against the cold stone, my hands still shaking, my heart still pounding. You planned this, Wei said. You knew they would betray you. You knew Consort Da was alive. You knew everything. Not everything, I said. I knew she might be alive. I knew the young rider might be a trap. I told you to be ready for anything. And you were. He nodded. There was something in his eyes that I had never seen before. Respect. And something else. Something that looked almost like fear. Where do we go now? He asked. I looked out at the rising sun. The capital was to the south. The war was to the north. The Empress Dowager and Consort Da were somewhere behind us, possibly dead, possibly not. The new emperor was waiting for news. I did not know what to do. I did not know where to go. But I knew one thing. I was still alive. And as long as I was alive, I had the power to choose. We go forward, I said. We go back to the capital. We tell the emperor what happened. And we finish this. Wei nodded. He said nothing. We rode south, toward the capital, toward the unknown. And I made a promise to myself, a promise I had made twice before and broken twice before. I would not die again. Not like this. Not until I had seen the end of this war. Not until I had seen the end of the Empress Dowager and Consort Da. Not until I had seen the end of everyone who had ever tried to use me as a pawn. I would not die until I was free. Truly free. Free of the palace. Free of the war. Free of the fear that had haunted me for 2 lifetimes. And when I was free, I would finally live. The capital was a ghost city when we rode through the gates. The streets were empty, the windows shuttered, the market stalls abandoned. The war had drained the life from it, but it was not the war that had done this. It was fear. The people knew something I did not. They knew the Empress Dowager and Consort Da had survived the fire. They knew the 2 women had regrouped and were marching on the capital with a combined army twice the size of the emperor's. They knew the end was coming. The palace guards let me pass without question. I was still Lu Yu, the woman with the emperor's ear, the woman who had walked into the enemy camp and walked out alive. They did not know that I had failed. They did not know that the Empress Dowager and Consort Da were still breathing, still scheming, still coming. The emperor was in his throne room, surrounded by a handful of exhausted ministers. He looked worse than I remembered. His eyes were sunken, his cheeks hollow, his hands trembling as he gripped the arms of his chair. He had not slept. He had not eaten. He was a boy king, drowning in a sea of chaos, and he was sinking fast. Lu Yu, he said when I entered. His voice cracked. You came back. I thought you might have run. I thought you might have abandoned me. I do not abandon people, I said. I survive them. He laughed. It was a broken, hopeless sound. Then you are the only one. My ministers are deserting me. My generals are defecting. My mother is leading an army against me. And I have no one. No one but you. I walked to the window and looked out at the city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. Somewhere beyond the walls, the Empress Dowager and Consort Da were preparing for their final assault. They would attack at dawn. They would overwhelm the capital's defenses. And they would kill everyone who stood in their way. But I had a plan. A dangerous plan. A plan that had been forming in my mind since the moment I escaped the burning tent. We do not fight them, I said. We do not defend the walls. We let them in. The emperor stared at me. Are you insane? If we let them in, they will slaughter us. They will burn the city. They will walk into a trap, I said. I have been thinking about this since I left the capital. The Empress Dowager is arrogant. Consort Da is desperate. They will not expect resistance. They will not expect a city that welcomes them with open arms. And when they are inside, when they are celebrating their victory, we will strike. I turned to face him. I need 3 things. First, I need you to evacuate the civilians. Get them out of the city tonight. Send them to the southern provinces. They will be safe there. Second, I need you to leave a small force of loyal soldiers inside the palace. Men who are willing to die for you. Men who will not betray you. And third, I need you to trust me. Completely. He was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. I will do it. But if this fails, it will not fail, I said. I have failed too many times. I will not fail again. The evacuation began at midnight. Thousands of people filed out of the city through the southern gates, carrying their belongings on their backs, their faces pale with fear. The soldiers helped them. The ministers directed them. And the emperor watched from the highest tower, his hands clenched on the railing. I did not watch. I was in the palace, preparing. Wei was with me, and Lin Jing and Xiaozhu. They had all refused to leave. They had all chosen to stay. We are with you, Xiaozhu said. To the end. I looked at them, these 3 people who had followed me from the cold palace to the cottage to the capital. They were not soldiers. They were not heroes. They were just people who had chosen to believe in me. Thank you, I said. I do not deserve you. Yes, you do, Lin Jing said. You saved us. All of us. Now let us save you. I did not argue. There was no time. We worked through the night, setting traps in the palace corridors, hiding weapons in the courtyards, preparing the throne room for the final confrontation. Wei was in his element, his shadow eunuch skills finally put to use in a way that did not involve murder. He rigged tripwires and hidden nets. He poisoned the wine in the great hall. He sealed the side doors so that the only way in or out was through the main entrance. They will come through the front, he said. They will want to see the throne. They will want to take it. It is the most dramatic way to win. Then we will give them drama, I said. We will give them a show they will never forget. Dawn came cold and gray. I stood in the throne room, dressed in my finest robes, the ones I had worn on the day I was first presented to the emperor. The emperor himself stood beside me, his face pale, but his chin lifted. Behind us, hidden in the shadows, were our loyal soldiers. 20 men. 20 willing to die. The gates of the city opened at sunrise. The Empress Dowager and Consort de rode in at the head of their army, their banners flying, their soldiers cheering. They had won. They thought they had won. They marched through the streets, their horses' hooves echoing on the cobblestones. They rode through the palace gates, their swords drawn, their faces triumphant. They dismounted in the courtyard and walked up the steps of the throne room. And then they saw me. The Empress Dowager stopped in her tracks. Her scarred face contorted with rage. Consort de stepped forward, her hand on her sword. You, she said. You are still alive. You are still standing in my way. How many times do I have to kill you? As many times as it takes, I said. I have been dead once. It is not as scary as you think. Consort de laughed. It was a cold, brittle sound. You are alone. You have no army. No allies. No hope. Why are you even trying? Because I have something you do not have, I said. I have the truth. The real truth. The truth that will destroy you both. I reached into my sleeve and pulled out the scrolls. The real scrolls. The ones I had found in Consort de's private chambers. The ones that proved everything. I have evidence of every crime you have ever committed, I said. The assassination of the late emperor. The fire that nearly killed the Empress Dowager. The conspiracy with the third prince. The attempted murder of a disgraced concubine. Everything. If I release these scrolls, your armies will desert you. Your generals will turn on you. Your legacy will be destroyed. The Empress Dowager stepped forward. Her hand was on her dagger. You cannot release what you do not have. You are bluffing. Am I? I unrolled one of the scrolls and held it up. It was covered in handwriting, small and cramped, the same handwriting I had seen in the Imperial Library. This is a record of your correspondence with the third prince. It details your plans to assassinate the emperor and blame it on Consort de. It is signed with your personal seal. Do you want me to read it aloud? The Empress Dowager's face went white. She reached for her dagger, but Consort de grabbed her arm. She is bluffing, Consort de hissed. She is trying to buy time. Do not fall for it. But I was not bluffing. I had spent the night memorizing the contents of those scrolls. I had spent the night preparing for this moment. I will make you a deal, I said. The same deal I offered you before. Surrender. Confess. Go to your monastery. And I will destroy these scrolls. Your families will be spared. Your servants will be allowed to live. You will have peace. The Empress Dowager laughed. It was a harsh, grating sound. Peace? You are offering me peace after everything you have done, after everything I have lost. I am offering you a chance, I said. A chance to die with dignity. A chance to be remembered as a woman who chose redemption. It is more than you deserve. Consort stepped forward, her sword drawn. I have had enough of your words. I will kill you now, and I will destroy those scrolls myself. She lunged. I stepped back. The soldiers hidden in the shadows moved forward, their weapons raised. But I had given them one order. Await, I said. Let her come. Consort paused, confused. She looked at me, her sword still pointed at my heart. What are you doing? She said. You are not even armed. I do not need to be armed, I said. Because I am not the one who is going to kill you. I looked past her, toward the great doors of the throne room. They were opening. And walking through them was a figure I had not expected to see again. The third prince. He was dressed in armor, his face grim, his sword drawn. Behind him was a contingent of soldiers, their uniforms bearing his personal crest. He had been in exile. He had been in hiding. But he had come. He had come to stop the war. Mother, he said, looking at the Empress Dowager. I am disappointed. The Empress Dowager stared at him, her face a mask of shock. You are supposed to be dead. I killed you. I sent assassins. You tried, he said. But Li warned me. She sent a messenger to my camp, telling me to prepare. She told me you would try to kill me. She told me to come here, to end this war once and for all. I had done it. I had sent that messenger the night I fled the burning tent. I had told the third prince everything. The Empress Dowager's conspiracy. Consort Does betrayal. The war that was tearing the empire apart. He had not believed me at first. But I had sent him proof. Copies of the scrolls. Names of his mother's assassins. Evidence that could not be ignored. And now he was here. He was going to end this. Consort turned to face him, her sword still raised. You are a traitor, she spat. You are a traitor to your mother. To your family. To your empire. I am a traitor to no one, the third prince said. I am a loyal son of the empire. And I will not let my mother destroy it out of greed and ambition. He walked past me and stood in front of the Empress Dowager. She looked up at him, her scarred face twisted with hatred. You are weak, she said. You have always been weak. You were never fit to be emperor. Perhaps not, he said. But I am fit to be a man. And a man does not let his mother burn his country to the ground. He turned to Consort. And you? You have been playing games for too long. You have been scheming and plotting and killing. And now it ends. Consort laughed. You cannot stop me. I have an army. I have the Empress Dowager's army. I have. You have nothing, I said. Look outside. She turned. The great doors were open, and through them, she could see the courtyard. It was filled with soldiers. But they were not her soldiers. They were the third prince's soldiers. They had surrounded the palace while she was distracted. You see, I said, I knew you would not surrender. I knew you would try to kill me. So I made a backup plan. The third prince and I have been in communication for weeks. He was waiting for the right moment. And this is it. Consort's face went pale. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a hatred so pure it was almost beautiful. You have been playing me, she said. You have been playing all of us. From the beginning. You were never neutral. You were never a pawn. You were always the one pulling the strings. I was a pawn, I said. I was a pawn in my first life. I was a pawn in this life, too, for a time. But I learned. I grew. And now I am no one's pawn. I am my own woman. She laughed again. It was a wild, desperate sound. Then she dropped her sword. Kill me, she said. Do it. I am tired of running. I am tired of scheming. I am tired of living. I looked at her. This woman who had tried to kill me. Who had tried to burn me alive. Who had tried to destroy everything I loved. No, I said. I will not kill you. That would be too easy. That would be a mercy. You will live. You will live in a cell, in a dungeon, with nothing but your thoughts. And you will think about everything you have done. You will think about every life you have destroyed. You will think about the empire you almost burned to the ground. And you will live with that, day after day, until the day you die. She stared at me. For the first time, I saw something like respect in her eyes. You are cruel, she said. Crueler than I ever was. No, I said. I am just. And that is worse. The soldiers took her away. They took the Empress Dowager too. She did not resist. She walked out of the throne room with her head held high, her scars glistening in the torchlight. She was defeated, but she was not broken. The third prince turned to me. His face was unreadable. You have done the empire a great service, he said. I will not forget it. I do not want your gratitude, I said. I want peace. I want an end to the war. I want to live my life without fear. He nodded. You will have it. I will make sure of it. He walked away, his soldiers following. The throne room was empty except for me and my companions. Wei stepped out of the shadows. Lin Jing and Xia Zhu followed. They were all alive. They were all safe. It is over, Xia Zhu whispered. It is really over. I looked at her. Then I looked at the throne. The empty throne. No, I said. It is not over. It is just beginning. I did not want the throne. I did not want power. I did not want revenge. I wanted something else. Something I had never had. I wanted freedom. Come, I said. We have a new journey to begin. We walked out of the palace together, the four of us. We walked through the empty streets, past the shuttered windows, past the abandoned market stalls. We walked through the gates of the city, out into the countryside. The sun was rising, warm and golden. The birds were singing. The world was waking up. We walked for days. We did not know where we were going. We did not care. We were together. We were alive. And finally, we found it. A small village at the foot of a mountain. A village with a stream and a forest and a field of wildflowers. A village that was untouched by war. This is it, I said. This is where we will live. Xia Zhu smiled. Lin Jing nodded. Even Wei allowed himself a small, rare smile. We built a cottage. We planted a garden. We lived our lives, day by day, simple and peaceful. And I was happy. Not because I had won. Not because I had survived. But because I had finally, truly, chosen my own path. I had finally stopped running. I had finally stopped fighting. I had finally started living. The war ended that winter. The third prince was crowned emperor. He was a good ruler, fair and just. He pardoned his mother and sent her to a monastery. He exiled Consort De to a remote island. He rebuilt the empire, piece by piece. I did not go back. I did not want to. I had found my peace. And I would not trade it for anything. In the spring, I sat in the garden and watched the flowers bloom. Xia Zhu was singing in the kitchen. Lin Jing was tending to the herbs. Wei was repairing the fence. And I thought about my first life. I thought about the woman who had died in the cold palace, confused and alone. I thought about the woman who had been reborn, determined to survive. I thought about the woman who had fought, schemed, and sacrificed to get here. I was not that woman anymore. I was someone new. Someone stronger. Someone free. The sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. I closed my eyes and breathed in the scent of the flowers. And I smiled. Because I had done it. I had found my ending. And it was not a tragedy. It was not a victory. It was peace.